Today I'm very pleased to welcome Kim Alter to the William Davidson Institute. The first question is, what is your definition of social enterprise?
This is a good question. I think that probably my definition is somewhat different from what's currently accepted as the mainstream definition, which slants more towards doing nonprofit ventures as a means to sustain social programs. So that can be funding that's directed to the social program vis-a-vis a business, whether or not it's mission related. And the more I've worked in this field, I came in through the funding door feeling that nonprofits needed to diversify their funding, they needed to be smarter about funding, they needed to look for alternative sources, and business was a means to do that. And the more I've worked in the field, the more I've come to realize that social enterprise it's about innovation. It's about taking what's crisp and sharp and valuable in business, principles, tools, innovation, creativity, agility, discipline, rigor, and bringing that into the nonprofit sector. And I think that when we ask the classic business question, what business are you in? For nonprofits, that's about mission accomplishment. So my definition in practice, working with practitioners over the years, has evolved to be social enterprise as a vehicle for mitigating a social problem or a market failure, using business as a vehicle to do that.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. In your opinion, what are some of the factors in really launching and sustaining a successful social enterprise?
Again, I think it's mission relevance, and the reason why is almost so obvious that we should all know it inherently, is nonprofit organizations, most of the people that are working in nonprofits or in the social sector have opted to do so out of a passion, a commitment to social change and being part of that social change. Often these people are paid less than they would be in the private sector, and their draw is really to be involved in a process in the work that the organization is doing, be it in health, be it in human rights, be it in education or economic development. And so I think that passion, which is what drives a business, which successfully drives a social enterprise and a nonprofit organization, is the key, and that means mission alignment. And so even recently there's been a series of surveys that have been done on U.S. Social enterprises, but the upshot of the 3 different surveys was that mission correlation, related or central to mission, was really the main key success factor. And aside from passion, I mean, it's pretty evident the reasons why, in that if you have passion, not only are you going to commit time, which is another key success factor, but you'll have buy-in at all levels, buy-in from the board, buy-in from your clients, buy-in from your community, your constituents, your donors, and that. So I think that those are really the key success factors: is mission alignment, time and commitment, and passion.
Okay, great. I know that in your role as a consultant and also in your role as really a writer about social enterprise and a thinker, you've probably come across a lot of really interesting examples. If you could just talk about, some of the examples that you think are the most interesting of successful social enterprises.
Mm-hmm. I think that this is what's most fun to me. My experience and my interest in this field is really on the design side, is working with startups and helping organizations conceive business ideas that are aligned with the mission or the social problems or change that they're trying to make. And so I think that there's so many amazingly creative ideas out there, and some of the ones that I like to start with are what I call the small is beautiful ideas, and sometimes these are very simple technologies. And this first idea came to me vis-a-vis a student at Oxford University who's a pediatrician, and one of the things, he's South African, and one of the stumbling blocks that he was coming across in the problem of infant mortality and morbidity is that that there's often not a power source in a village to use an ultrasound machine, or there's not the which is the main, medical device for monitoring, unborn children, fetuses. And so he worked with another organization to develop wind-up technology that had these very simple 5 medical devices to reduce infant mortality and morbidity. And they don't require technical training that an ultrasound machine would do. And then, of course, you don't need a stable energy source. Mm-hmm. Solar paneling is another thing that's been a very simple technology design that has translated into social enterprise around the world. And in India, I've seen a great example of a business that was replacing kerosene lamps. And kerosene, there's been many, many deaths caused from a kerosene lamp tipping over. There's health hazards in addition to fire just from the fumes due to kerosene. It tends to be expensive for poor people. And so the solar panels are a great replacement. They're lighter, they're not injurious on the eyes. And then there's been a lot of other applications, of course, for solar. A project we worked on in Mexico, which I thought was just another great small is beautiful idea, was a tool lending library. And this is hammers, saws. Generally, I think among academics or professionals, when we think about tools, we think about something on paper, a design tool, a business plan tool. And what I'm talking about is really hammers, saws, pressure washers, cement mixers, sanders. And so some of the barriers between a day laborer or somebody that can own their own business is access to tools. And so a tool lending library is, it's very inexpensive in the sum of the impact that it makes. And if you design it so the tools are related to economic activities that people can do, and then you also can capture some of that through integration. And in this case, we tied it to a hospitality business by creating economic opportunities around construction to the tool library. So this was a joint project with Habitat for Humanity, and it was building what they called techos, which was a room, a B&B room on top of the dwelling to enable people that own the dwelling to have an economic resource or an economic income, and to provide work that was centered around the tool library. So there was construction. I think some of the more in economic development aligns quite nicely with social enterprise because the mission related is business, right? So it's either wealth creation, job creation, economic security. And so one of the quintessential social enterprises, of course, is a microfinance institution. And there we see examples and derivations all around the world that now have gone from what was, at one point called cookie cutter microfinance to microfinance in post-conflict, microfinance institutions for people with HIV/AIDS. And so the designs and configurations around, who your target population would be in a community where the majority of the productive population is dying. So there you have people that are either very young or very old. So I think that's another interesting area. You can see I have a great passion about this and come up with a lot of examples. But the civil society sector, too, is one where sometimes the fit isn't quite as tight with the mission. And there, too, I've seen many, many really interesting examples. One is in Ukraine. It comes to mind a restaurant that was the first smoke-free and alcohol-free restaurant in Ukraine. And if you know anything about the restaurant business, the margins are made on alcohol. And this is a Chernobyl zone area. People, the target population of this humanitarian organization were the highly vulnerable. They were mainly homeless. They were unemployed. They were people with cancer, largely, due to the Chernobyl disaster. They were alcoholic and drug addicts. And so the founder was just confident in her commitment to start this smoke-free and alcohol-free restaurant. And it has taken off like wildfire. I think it's one of those cases where it's hard to do the market research because you don't know how many people don't go to a restaurant because they're smoky or because there's too many drunk people. So her marketing message was as a respite for families. And so she stayed true to her mission, and she was able to change her business model, which was giving groceries away and hot meals to families, which has no sustainability whatsoever, to a restaurant that could generate some income, as well as providing those meals and services to families. So there's many, many very, very exciting examples out there. There was just one more to mention, is an organization that works with youth at risk. They're in Kazakhstan. They had several different types of small businesses, but one of the ones that was most interesting was their Street Kids program. These are kids that are, many of them are drug addicted or formerly drug addicted or at risk for drug addiction. And what they're doing is educational campaigns, and their medium is breakdancing and rap. And so the rap songs have the message about don't use drugs, and if you use drugs, clean needle. So they had a clean needle program, and they had a DJ program where the kids could all revolve around this activity of music and dance and breakdancing, and community events around this. And they started a disco, which was also no alcohol, and the public message of it's, not to quote Nancy Reagan, but to say no, but it's cool to be straight maybe is a better a better motto. But in fact, it's the hippest place in town for the young people to go, and so it provides also a safe haven for them, and it provides income for the organization. And in this case, I think it helps them expand their mission. So in some of the organizations that are civil society organizations where there's not as tight a mission fit, this is an opportunity to actually expand or enhance the mission of the organization.
Thanks a lot. It's really inspiring to hear all these kind of creative strategies and things that are working out in the field. I'm curious, do you think that social enterprise is a strategy that's right for all nonprofits? There seems to be more and more talk about social enterprise. I think it's a concept that's becoming more mainstream, definitely domestically, and maybe to some degree internationally as well. But is it something that all nonprofits should do?
No. I think that's a good question. Where a lot of work needs to be done, I think, is on the design stage, and there aren't a lot of resources. So organizations come into social enterprise with either mixed motives or naively thinking that this is something that will generate a lot of income. And I think in order to be successful, and in order to screen for whether or not this is the right decision for your organization, you need to look at readiness. Social enterprise, in many ways it turns the way that we manage a nonprofit organization on its head. So a lot of our business paradigms are pretty much opposite to traditional nonprofit paradigms. And that challenges an organization, and I think ultimately it requires the organization transform and become more entrepreneurial and more businesslike. And for a lot of organizations, they can't go through this transformation process. It affronts too many of the core values. It creates too much stress within the organization, and it's too much change. So that's one level no. Other organizations, for example, human rights organizations, there's not always an inherent or a good opportunity for these organizations to integrate business. And so this is about mission alignment too. And so in those cases, sometimes an organization is better raising money. You have to look at the opportunity cost of running a business. So I think that the diligence of deciding whether or not a business or a social enterprise is for your organization needs to be done on the front end with some self-reflection that probably needs to be facilitated. And the priorities and objectives need to be very, very clear. What's the social objectives for doing this social enterprise? What are the financial objectives? what are the social problems that we're trying to solve, or financial problems, and how can we conceive and design a business that will meet those objectives. And if the answers are no, or if the organization isn't culturally ready to bring on the burden of running a business, or they don't have the time, or they don't have the resources, then it's probably not a good idea.
Okay. Well, thanks again for coming to the Davidson Institute, and we look forward to working with you closely in the future.
Well, thank you very much for having me.